All right, Dawn, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Well, great. Welcome, everybody. And as I was telling Lauren when we first logged on, we're under construction here at TCH. And so many of us are displaced for this phase of construction. So we are actually in the electrical room working. So there's three of us that are working in here. So you might see somebody walk by, or our supported individuals have been known to walk in during meetings. So just wanted to give a heads up just in case something like that happens. So this is training on fleet management and data reporting. So we can go to the next slide. We do have some surveys. And so the first one is, what format does your organization maintain vehicle and other grant-related data reporting information? So give everybody a minute to do that. And Lauren, just let me know when you've got the information. All right, so it looks like most everybody does both, which is not a bad thing, especially when you review some of the information that is required by the City of Phoenix 5310 grant program. It's good to have a hard copy and electric copy just in case you need one or the other. All right, so we're going to go on to the next slide. So this is another poll question. So if your organization maintains records electronically, do you use a management software for keeping record? Give everybody a minute. All right, so it looks like the majority of people do, and a couple of people don't know if they do or not. It's completely understandable. All right, so let's go to the next slide. One more poll question, and then we'll move into the other stuff. So how many vehicles does your organization have? So what size is your fleet? And usually we have a pretty good range of fleet sizes on these sessions. And again, we do. So great. So we have everything from 1 to 5 to over 50. Wonderful. All right. So next slide, please. So as we talk about, compliance and data reporting, and I mean, we just all finished our annual reports for those that have 5310 vehicles or funding. There's a lot that goes into that. And if it was your first time going through the data reporting, you can see that they ask for some very specific information, as well as if you have vehicles, all of the maintenance records that go along with any maintenance that have been done for that year, as well as your inspections. And so all of that stuff is critical to making sure that we are in compliance with the 5310 program. So first and foremost, don't wait till the last minute, and it's okay to ask for help. So don't wait till the last minute. We're told far in advance that basically every October 15th for the annual reports, we know that it's October 15th. This year we had a little bit of an extension to the 31st, which was wonderful. But coming up in October, you're going to have these reports. So things like your annual inspections, don't wait until September to try to get, all of them done, especially if you have a big fleet. Really, those should be occurring over the year, over time, so that you're not harried, and you're not, you might not be able to get it in for some reason, and then you don't have that report to put as part of your overall report. Next slide. So I do say it's okay to ask for help. The team at the City of Phoenix and MAG, as well as the Title 6 compliance, Title 4 compliance, sorry, they are all amazing individuals to work with, and they want to see us succeed. So they're willing to step in and help. This year for TCH, we just had to do our updates for our plan. And then any struggles that we've had getting through that, they've been great to walk us through those steps. The other reporting that we do, of course, is if you get any mobility management money or preventative maintenance or some of the other funds, you have to do the reimbursements. And so there's lots of forms that go with that. And we recently had a change in staff here in terms of our fleet management. And so I had to do the reimbursement, and it was the first time I had to do it by myself. So they were really great because I forgot to turn something in. And they just reached back out and said, hey, here's what you need. And I had a couple questions about it, and we were able to get through it very easily. And again, they just really want to help. You also have all of the sub-regional mobility managers listed on the screen there that you can reach out to anytime. And all of those mobility managers are going to help you through the process. And if they don't have the answer, they're going to find it for you. Next slide. So some of the information that we're required to track are things like mileage, trips, and those kinds of things. And within the system, they want to make sure that we are doing pre and post vehicle inspections. And so one of the things that we did this year is we updated our reporting information for our drivers. We realized that the pre-inspections weren't being done as consistently as they should have been because they were on a separate sheet. So we have created a brand new sheet that has all of the information on it. So it's got who's driving it, the date, the number of passengers, and we've broken it out by wheelchair and ambulatory. And that's some of that's for our records so that we know how many wheelchair participants have been going at different activities as well as ambulatory. Obviously, we want to know where they're going and then the mileage. And we make sure that everybody's removed from the vehicles, especially in the summertime, and so on. And then it also has all of the core pieces when you're talking about doing your inspection, so that anything that's marked on there can be turned into the fleet department and it can be addressed immediately. And so this just gives you an idea. And you know, we're willing to share this form if it's something that somebody else would like to try to utilize. We're willing to share it. We don't have any problem with that. It does give for which van it is. So all of our vans are numbered. Some people may utilize a different system for keeping track of all of their vehicles. So then that way we keep folders in the fleet department. Once these come in on a regular basis, there's a folder that's like maybe van 191, and all of 191 sheets go in there. So then if we have a question or we need something, we can pull it out. And then for those of you that may be new or have not gone through the compliance, which is a newer aspect of the 5310 program, we were one of the organizations that were chosen this year for the compliance process. And one of the things that they wanted to see was all of our mileage forms from the last year. So we were able to pull those folders out, copy them, scan them in, whatever we needed to do. And they were right at the, you know, our fingertips and easy to get to. Next slide. So the other piece that we have is when somebody wants to sign out a vehicle, this is a van sign out sheet. So when they're getting their keys, they have to sign for them. And it just lists some of the same information that's on the mileage form from above. But that way we're able to track on both counts. And then we're always reminding our employees that half or below you have to refuel. And so you'll see that on a variety of our forms just as a reminder because sometimes they forget. And so again, this just is a way that we track who is signing out the keys to make sure that if they didn't fill out the other form, we have this form filled out so we know at least who was driving it, so we can go back and address, hey, you know, you need to make sure that you're doing your pre-inspections and you're fulfilling all of the information in there. And if they're not filling the vehicles and we see that there's an issue like one person who's consistently not filling them up, we can address that as well. Next slide, please. So keeping physical copies. So we've talked a little bit about this. And I've said, you know, a little bit about why you should keep physical copies. As stated, for the compliance, they wanted to see all of our mileage forms. And so whether we have the physical copies or they were online, we were going to have to print them out one way or the other. So we just keep all of our physical copies in files based on each vehicle. Um, what copies should you keep? That's going to be up to each organization. We keep copies of the majority of the information that comes through. So we keep copies of all of the invoices, all of the bills that we pay in reference to each vehicle. And again, those go into those separate. And then based on your file retention, when do you discard those copies? And again, that's going to be up to each organization. We generally keep everything at least 7 years, unless it's related to our supported individuals, because there's a whole separate set of rules around that. And also there's some information rules around certain medical records for our employees that you have to keep longer. Next slide. So using software for record keeping, this is a really important piece as well. Yes, we do keep physical copies, but we also use what's called a fix program. So it's an asset program, and all of our assets, not just our vehicles, are in this system. So this is really helpful because we can we scan in all of the invoices. So not only do we have the hard copies, but we have a scanned form within the fix system, which is backed up, so that if anything ever goes down within our internet, we still have those files. But if anything happened within the building, hopefully nothing would happen, and something happened to the files, the physical files, we would still have the records that are kept up in the record keeping software. We can also look for anomalies within our vehicles. We can see if there's a vehicle that's having consistent issues. Maybe it's transmission and we've had to replace certain aspects of it, and now it's at a point where we have to replace the whole transmission. So you're able to make some decisions and hopefully be more proactive with getting all that information. And when it comes to reporting, it's easy for us to look, and we can sort information by dates in terms of records that we're looking for. So we can be like, okay, do we have all of our annual inspections? And we can go through all of the files and look and see, oh gosh, we're missing this one, but we have everything else. Because you can run reports based on dates, based on forms you're looking for. And so it makes it really, really easy and less timely in terms of like time consuming to get to some of the information you need. Next slide. So as I stated, that's one of the things, this is the system that we use. So this is just a picture. So we have a picture of the vehicle that goes along with the van number. And then this shows you just a basic of what all the documents and images that are in there. So every time the vehicle goes to the shop, that invoice is uploaded into the fix system and recorded. So that gives you a good idea of what it looks like when we're able to. And again, when you see like size and file type and preview and dates, you can sort by all of those different things. Next slide. So scanning and saving records, we briefly touched on this as well. As soon as something comes in, it gets scanned and put in, because sometimes the physical copies get lost and could be on somebody's desk and accidentally get shredded or something like that. So and again, not waiting till the last minute till you have a huge stack of things to scan in, because you're more likely to lose something. And that way you can scan it in and file it, and you have everything you need when time comes for either a compliance review or the annual reporting. And it also helps when you're writing your grants. So you have all that information readily available. Next slide. Setting up maintenance dates with reminders for service. So that's another thing that's really nice about a lot of these online asset systems. We can put in there that we know that vehicle 191 is going to need an oil change every so often. So we can put into the system and it will trigger a notification that says, hey, 191 is due for oil service. So we can get it scheduled, and it helps us to not forget, especially if you have a large fleet. Some of the smaller fleets, this might not be as, critical, but we happen to have a larger fleet. And so trying to remember which vehicles have gone in for service and which ones haven't, just for the preventative maintenance piece, is very difficult. And then if you have other issues that come in on top of that, it makes it harder to remember what's been done and what hasn't. It also helps with ensuring that as people are reserving vehicles, we have the right vehicles available for whatever activity is that day. So this is helping you to be proactive in setting up your schedules as well as making sure that all of the work is done as required. Next slide. So we do create folders within our organization. We have not only the fixed system, but we have an intranet that all of us can utilize to access different folders. So we have a whole fleet folder. And then within that fleet folder, it's broken down by vehicles. This, what you're seeing here, is actually our grant folder for the Section 5310 annual reports. And this is for the 2021 milestone report. So it shows you some of the files that had been put in there prior to us finishing the report, because when you return your report back to the 5310 program, it's got to be named in such a way. And so that we would have renamed all of these when we went to send it back. But this gives you an idea of how we set it up so that we have annual reports, we have it done by date, and then under that date, we have supporting documentation, we have all of the vehicle information, because supporting documentation can include a variety of different forms, like your annual reporting for the Title VI plan, and then going forward from there. Next slide. So this is what I was talking about with the annual reporting. Next slide. So this report is required, or plan is required to be updated every 3 years. And again, we just happened to fall in this year with needing to update it because it was 3 years old. There is a template, if you've never done one, that you can go through the City of Phoenix and pull that down. And it's very easy to utilize. This year, there were some things that needed to be updated in ours. So I sent it over to Antoinette, and she made all of the references that we needed to fix. And so we were able to go in and fix that. And again, don't wait till the last minute for this. It takes them a while to get through all of the information that's in your plan. And so, and you have to have your board of directors approve it prior to them approving it. And so you need to get all of that done before the expiration date. So it can be a little tricky, but there are a lot of resources there. And again, the team that works on this has been great to work with. Next slide. So the milestone progress report, we've talked a little bit about that. And again, we just went through it. If you've never gone through it before, or this was your first time and you struggled with anything, we've all been there. So this just gives you an idea of some of the information that goes into it. But one of the things that you have to do is, for every vehicle that you have in your fleet that's a 5310 vehicle, is you have to do an inventory sheet. And it's very specific of the information that has to go in. And there's, so the bigger the fleet, the more of those you have, because you do one sheet per vehicle. This just shows you kind of the overview of the very beginning of the milestone report. But there's other information in there. So when we talk about gathering the data for number of trips, because they want to know, you know, how many people were you serving, as well as how many boardings. And so every time somebody gets on a vehicle, it's a boarding. And so if you take 5 people to the store, that's 5 boardings. If you take 5 people back, that's 5 more boardings. So having your forms that are in your vehicles, as well as like when they check out the keys to know how many people are going, we're able to track that information so that we can report it back to the city. Next slide. And again, this is the vehicle maintenance log that I was talking about. So you have to be very specific with all of these information. And then you want to make sure that when you get all of the information in there, so this, every invoice that you have for that vehicle for that year goes in here. And then you need to make sure that whatever's on this maintenance log and your backup documentation match, so that every invoice you have on there, you have a copy that goes as your backup with it. Next slide. Again, we talked about making sure that you have your annual inspections done ahead of time. You don't want to wait till the last minute. It's so much easier that if, you know, you're doing it on maybe a stagger, depending on how big your fleet is, maybe in January you have this many, February, March, April, so that you're getting them all done in the year. And then you need to include that information on that vehicle maintenance log that we just looked at. Next slide. again, reviewing those invoices and maintenance to make sure everything lines up, that the mileage is correct, your VIN. And again, this takes some time. So if you wait till the last minute, you may not turn in the correct information, or you may make a mistake. And again, they're really good about saying, hey, I don't understand this. But for us to be as proactive to make sure that we're getting information in a timely, accurate manner helps the Phoenix team get through our documents a little bit quicker. And they have a lot of documents to go through. And then organize in chronological order. Don't just randomly throw things in. That way it makes it easier again for them to be able to go through. Next slide. So reimbursement. So this is what we were talking about. If you get any type of monies from the city, excuse me, you need to do a quarterly reimbursement. And I know sometimes we get a little behind, or sometimes something's come up and we may forget. So the idea is, though, that we do it quarterly. And this gives you an idea of how you request what you're getting. They're going to send you over a form that has some information on it to start with, and then it's up to us to put that information in as accurately as we can, so that it shows how we've been spending the money. And then there's backup documentation that goes with this as well. And that's one of the forms that gets turned in when you're doing your reimbursements. And you have to have signatures. So for us, we have our CFO, as well as whoever completes the form, whether it's the fleet manager or myself. So you need to make sure that your CFO is in office and available to sign, or can do it electronically. But something, again, to remember, that it's not necessarily just one person that needs to sign and review it. So next slide. I know that was a lot of information. Any questions at this point about the grant process, the compliance, the reporting?
There's nothing in the chat box, so if you do have a question, you can go ahead and unmute and ask.
I guess I'm curious, has everybody gone through all of these processes, like the compliance and the milestone reports?
Maybe that would be a good survey question to add for the next one, Dawn.
I think so, because with the compliance, like I said, this was the first year we went through it, because they've updated the compliance process. So we received an email and said, hey, we need compliance. And they sent us all this information that we had to then complete, or documents that we needed to return back in. So we turned all of that stuff back in. And then they scheduled a time and came out, and they randomly picked some of our vehicles to review. So we had to have those vehicles on site. And so it was interesting to go through the process for the first time. You have to make sure that your grievance policies are in your vehicles, that's easy to see. They can't be like in the glove box. They have to be accessible. So there was a lot of things. I mean, we had the majority of that anyway, but those were some of the things that they were looking for. And so if anybody, gets into a compliance situation where they're like, okay, you're going through a compliance review this year, you can always reach out to us and we'll help you go through it. I see that there's a question about, no, but what takeaway, they have not gone through the process. What takeaways do you have from compliance review? Be prepared. So when they came, I had a binder of what we submitted as the physical documents, in terms of that were required within the email that they had originally sent. I had the agenda that they had printed out, letting us know what the process was that day and any of the things that they were going to need to look at. And there was a couple of things that we knew, like our pre-trip inspections, we knew that we weren't doing those consistently. And so we created the form prior to the compliance review, so that we were saying, hey, we're ready. We understand. We know that we weren't doing this right. So we fixed it already. One of the other things that came up for us, and that was the one thing that I guess that we needed to correct. We had one correction that we needed to make, and that was the drug-free workplace policy review on an annual basis. So when our employees are hired, we do a drug-free workplace. We also go through and like in the application, in our phone screening, in the interview, and then at NEO, we talk about drug-free workplace. So TCH is also a federal contractor outside of the 5310 program. So we have some pretty stringent guidelines that we have to follow, but we weren't updating our employees on an annual basis about drug-free workplace. So we now have put something in place. I worked with our human resources department to have something in place that people are going to have to sign off on an annual basis. So that was something we learned, but now it's something that we can pass on and be like, okay, you need to make sure you have this in place because it is something that they're going to look for going forward. And again, if you get into the situation where they're going to be doing a compliance, please reach out. We are a mobility manager as well, and we are so happy to help because we learned some lessons going through it. And so we can share that with anybody that has to go through it in the future. And it looks like there's several people on here that this is their first year that they're going to have to submit documents, or their first year being involved with the 5310. Crash course in filling in the information. Been there, Lori, been there. So yeah, and again, reach out. We are so willing to help, share our best practices, share what we do. It may work for you, it may not. You may be able to tweak it, but we are absolutely an open book when it comes to that because sharing best practices is the only way we're all going to get better. Any other questions or comments or things that you're interested in? It can be even outside of this. Yeah. Yeah, poor Dan. So Dan Smaller is our new fleet and facilities manager. And I think within the first couple of weeks that he was hired, we had to go through the compliance. Now, I've been doing this for a long time, so it was really helpful. And I was able to have everything ready. But yeah, Dan was thrown into it from the get-go.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting process. It'll be a lot easier next year now that I know kind of what they're looking for.
Any other questions or comments or anything? I mean, I appreciate you guys' time and, I hope the information helped.
Yeah, Dawn, you did a great job. And obviously, as Dawn said many times, feel free to reach out to us now that I've gone through it. I feel pretty comfortable kind of answering questions or as best I can. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns.
Thank you both so much for that. I'm always interested to hear how people have been going through this process and what tips and tricks they have. So thank you both for sharing those. As I mentioned, this recording will be up on the MAG website along with the slides here shortly. So if you want to go back and if you missed anything, you can go ahead and rewatch that. And if you would like a certificate of attendance, please send me an email and I will get that over to you.